Welcome to this video on U.S. workers' compensation rating and premium calculation, presented by Insurance Domain Training Center. The workers' compensation rating process in the United States is both complex and highly regulated. Building or working with a rating engine requires a clear understanding of these underlying mechanics and regulatory nuances. If you are involved in the process, particularly from an IT or systems perspective, and want to grasp premium calculation quickly and effectively, this video is designed for you. Let's break down the key concepts and unpack the nuances step by step.
Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer, everyone. Today, we are unpacking the workers' compensation premium rating process, specifically for the U.S. geography. We're looking at what is widely considered the absolute most complex, actuarially intensive rating system in the entire United States property and casualty market. So we're going to break down the exact mathematical steps and, more importantly, the heavy IT architecture you need to make it all work without losing your minds.
Here's a quick look at our agenda. First, we'll cover the unique USA context. Second, calculating the base premium. Third, modifiers, discounts, and fees. Fourth, IT and system implications. And finally, why this complexity actually matters.
All right, Section 1, the unique USA context.
So it turns out the process we're about to outline is entirely exclusive to the United States. If you're building IT systems for the UK, Europe, India, the Middle East, or APAC, honestly, you can just toss this whole framework out the window. They use entirely different setups. The rest of the world generally relies on much simpler premium calculations, mostly based just on wages, and they're often run by government monopolies. But the US system, it is intensely actuarial. It's strictly governed by the NCCI, that's the National Council on Compensation Insurance, or by independent state rating bureaus. Plus, it utilizes really complex historic modifiers, like experience mods. This extreme uniqueness is exactly why off-the-shelf global software almost always fails here, and why your specific IT configurations are incredibly vital for the US market.
Moving right along to Section 2, calculating the base premium.
Everything starts with the foundation, which is the loss cost. Basically, this represents the expected losses per $100 of payroll. You can think of it kind of like the base MSRP of a car. This data is handed down directly by the NCCI or the state bureaus, and it's based entirely on industry classification risk. Now here is an absolutely crucial rule for your rating engines. Insurers cannot change these values, period. It's the non-negotiable baseline of the whole formula.
Now, that brings us to a really interesting variable, the LCM, or loss cost multiplier. Because think about it, if an insurer can't change that base loss cost, how on earth do they compete? Well, the LCM is the specific factor where an insurer adds their own expense and profit load right on top of that baseline. This multiplier is filed by the insurer, and it's where they actually get to control their pricing. Let's look at how these elements actually sequence together in the first 6 steps of our workflow. Step 1, identify the class codes to reflect the nature of the business operations. Step 2, capture the payroll. And keep in mind, payroll acts as the primary rating base here. It's got to be allocated to each class code separately. Step 3, pick those non-negotiable loss costs we just talked about. From there, Step 4 is to apply the insurer-specific loss cost multiplier. This brings us right into Step 5, where we calculate the manual rate, which is simply the loss cost multiplied by the LCM. And finally, Step 6, compute the manual premium by taking that manual rate, multiplying it by the payroll, and dividing by 100. It's a beautifully logical flow, right? But at this stage, it's still completely raw. It doesn't account for the individual behavior of the employer at all.
Which brings us to Section 3, modifiers, discounts, and fees. Now that we have that base rate, how do we actually adjust for risk?
While we do it primarily through the experience modifier, which is commonly called the experience mod. This is a massive factor in U.S. workers' comp. It reflects an employer's historic loss record compared to the industry average. The math is simple, but the financial impact is huge. If an employer's safety record is great, they get a factor of less than 1.00, which gives them a credit. It literally makes their insurance cheaper. But if their history is poor, the factor is greater than 1.00, adding a debit. So an employer's past safety record directly and mathematically impacts their wallet.
Continuing our 12-step process, Step 7 applies that experience mod. Step 8 introduces schedule rating. Now this is fascinating because it's highly discretionary. Insurers can add debits or credits based on subjective things like management quality, safety culture, or process discipline. Step 9 applies premium discounts, like credits for having a formal safety program in place. Then, Step 10, add in mandatory state fees and surcharges. We're talking things like catastrophe funds or terrorism charges.
Step 11 is to generate a highly detailed rating worksheet that fully complies with state regulations. And finally, step 12, we arrive at the final estimated premium. Notice I said estimated, because this initial calculation is based on an estimate of the year's payroll. The final bill is always subject to adjustment after a formal payroll audit.
Synthesizing all these building blocks reveals a really clear structure. The loss cost originates from the NCCI or the State Bureau, establishing your base. The LCM comes from the insurer, adding their profit and expense, and the experience mod comes from the employer's actual loss history, which directly rewards or penalizes that history. When you're mapping out your system architecture, understanding exactly where each piece of data originates is absolutely critical to designing a functional workflow.
All right, Section 4, IT and System Implications.
So, this is the million-dollar question for all the business analysts and system architects out there. How do we build this complex, highly regulated 12-step process into a functional, lightning-fast rating engine?
Well, the technical demands are heavy, to say the least. First, your rating engine integrations need to be rock solid. You need NCCI XML or API feeds to constantly pull in updated scopes manuals, loss costs, class code updates, and mod updates. Your system must support multi-factor dynamic calculations. It needs to store and quickly call upon complex LCM tables per insurer. And crucially, it must have version-controlled rating formulas. These rates and rules change constantly, and you need to know exactly which formula applied on the specific effective date of a given policy.
Beyond the rating engine itself, look at these core module requirements. Your system must support multiple class codes per policy. It has to generate detailed, compliance-ready worksheets with full audit logs. It needs robust data warehousing for mandatory statistical reporting back to the NCCI and state funds. And so, the absolute crucial takeaway here is this. Because that final premium in Step 12 is just an estimate based on payroll, your audit module, which handles midterm audits, final audits, and retroactive adjustments, is arguably just as critical as your rating engine. If your audit module is weak, the entire premium lifecycle just breaks down.
And this brilliantly illustrates a massive trap in U.S. workers' comp IT projects: state differences logic. Because this is an entirely state-based system, hard-coding the process is a terrible mistake. Your systems have to adapt to independent bureau rules for states like California, Delaware, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, none of which use the standard NCCI data. They have to handle specific state exclusions, entirely different class codes, and vastly different fee and surcharge tables. Flexibility isn't a luxury here, it is an absolute baseline requirement.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Why the Complexity Matters.
12. That is 12 standardized, completely integrated, and heavily regulated mathematical steps. That is the sheer density of this workflow. And remember, that is just to generate an estimated premium. This is precisely why workers' compensation is considered the heaviest, most demanding rating system in the USA property and casualty market when it comes to IT implementation.
So I'll leave you with this final provocative thought to take back to your development teams. If USA workers' compensation is the most detailed and actuarially intensive rating system globally, is your IT architecture robust enough to handle the state-by-state variations? Look closely at your NCCI integration feeds, review the flexibility of your LCM tables, and seriously pressure test your audit modules. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and good luck building.
Thank you for watching the Quick Bite series from www.inzu.com. Please like and subscribe to our videos for you to get notification when we upload new videos.